2 weeks after ordering and only 2 weeks to go until delivery, and I've cancelled my order. Alright, today on TDCat Tech I want to talk to you about the reason that I cancelled my order for the DJI Mini 3 Pro drone. Well, I've only actually owned my Mini 2 for about 6 weeks, and I was in one of those situations that I'm sure lots of you are in out there, where you're thinking to yourselves, do I need to upgrade? Is it worth an upgrade for me? Is it something I need to update? Well, only 6 weeks after having purchased some kit, that's a pretty tricky one to answer, isn't it? But, you look at the feature list initially of the DJI Mini 3 Pro, and it's full of all these wonderful extras, and they've really added a lot to it. And there's just so much stuff to entice you in and draw you in and feed those drug-inducing parts of your brain that make you just want to buy more tech. Well, in this case, the fact that I had to wait so long for my order was to the detriment of DJI, because I have, of course, as I say, now cancelled. So if you, at some point this week, if probably in the UK actually, suddenly got a notification from DJI saying, around in the afternoon sometime, probably mid-afternoon, got a notification from DJI saying, you know what, your drone's now being delivered on the 10th of June. Well, that was mine. You're welcome. So I was looking at the points that made me think, why do I actually want to upgrade? So I thought I'd just go through these points with you and talk about, I guess, the bad sides as well, because everybody talks about, everyone raves and raves about, oh, isn't this amazing? It's absolutely fantastic and all this. So I'm just gonna mentally pull it apart a little bit and try and dissuade you from buying something, I suppose, dissuade you from having to upgrade what is an already wonderful piece of equipment. The Mini 2 is a decent drone. It takes decent images. Nothing has changed in that. The only thing that's changed is there's one available that does it slightly better. The first one on my list was the 48 megapixel sensor. Well, it's kind of a 48 megapixel sensor, kind of a 12 megapixel sensor. It's quad buyer technology, actually, which is kind of well, there's no such thing as a free lunch, I suppose the expression goes, in that don't quote me on the tech here because I'm not an expert on quad buyer filters and all that sort of stuff, but it's the actual sensor that's changed. So the sensor is a 48 megapixel sensor, but the buyer filter that's over the top of it remains the same. So effectively you have 4 light receptors, 4 photosensitive pixels or whatever underneath each of the filters. So you'll have a green one, and instead of having 1 photosensitive bit underneath, you've got 4. And that allows you to do some really fancy stuff. You can take multiple exposures with each individual ones and put them together to create a better image and high dynamic range stuff and all that. And there is no doubt that it can produce more detail. So as a whole, it is a good thing, but it's not all good. It isn't just a case of it was a 12 megapixel sensor. It's now 4 times the detail. It is nowhere near as simple as that. I realised from starting to use the Mini 2 that taking pictures with your drone is actually much more fun than I thought. I thought it would all be a matter of video, but it's actually, taking pictures is great. The image quality is wonderful on the DNG images that come off the drone. And the fact that being able to take portrait images would be a really, really nice extra to have on the Mini 2. I can live without it though. I can maybe just take 2 images and merge them together or something like that. Depending on how quickly I could do that, I could probably pan up and take another image. It's quite possible to do that. That's what I would have done in the past with a stills camera. I would have just whizzed around, taken a couple of shots, set my exposure, just gone click, 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 put them all together. It's always worked absolutely fine. 60p is great because it allows you to slow the footage down in 30p and you can get some nice slow-mo footage. I don't know though, because I thought that 4K 30p would be no good on a drone. When I first used it, again I say I'm totally new to this. When I first used it, I first shot at 2.7K 60p because I thought the fact there's a lot of motion with a drone, you would need that 60 frames of a second of time resolution, as it were. But I don't think you do. The 30 frames per second footage looks absolutely fine in my experience, and if it doesn't, you've probably got motion with your drone that is too jerky, maybe not as fluid as it should be. So it depends what you're shooting, of course, but the sort of stuff that I was doing was just, your standard kind of like beach sea shots, just getting used to flying the thing to start with, nothing fancy. But I guess if there could be situations where you're doing something much more dynamic and 60 frames would be necessary. But for me, at least, I kind of thought, well, 30 frames per second, 4K on the Mini 2 looks decent. It looks decent enough for what I'm doing. Now, this is going to be a contentious one. Point number 5 is 10-bit color. They released a firmware upgrade for the Mini 3 Pro, only a few weeks after it being released, maybe even 1 week after it being released, upgrading the color on the Cine profile to 10-bit. Now, I think it's still 420 chroma subsampling rather than 422, but let's just go with 10-bit color, because of course that sort of increases the number of colors we have to over 1 billion versus millions. Can you tell the difference? Well, yes, people can. There's no question of that. When people are grading footage, they can tell a difference. How much you can tell a difference with a small sensor like this on a camera like this, I don't really know. But I'm no doubt there are plenty of videos out there praising the fact they've done this and showing what a massive difference it makes when you push the footage and push the graded footage. But again, I come back to the fact that the Mini 2 footage isn't awful. It's not like I haven't shot anything with it and just been like, that is absolutely useless. It's totally unusable, in the bin, no good. Why did I even buy this drone in the first place? What you suggest? I've just never done that. It's a perfectly fine image as it is. And there are, in fact, people still on forums saying that, well, DJI haven't confirmed that they've increased this to 10-bit. Has it actually even happened? It would just be funny if someone turned around and suddenly said, actually, you know what? It's not. We put it in the data. We put it in the kind of like file wrapper or whatever and said it's 10-bit, but actually it's not. So fooled you. Number 6 is active track. Now, this is a bit of a personal one for me because I thought to myself, well, I would really, really like a drone with a little more obstacle avoidance. Yes, that's true, I would. And active track would be really nice. As a one-person operation, being able to have a drone where I could just maybe get some nice, interesting shots if I'm just like out and I'm kind of walking and I could just set a drone to take a shot of myself or something like that. But then I sort of realized that 95% of the time, those sort of shots that I would have been doing would have been in the Bristol area, which is where I live. That's where I would film. Of course, there would be times when I was somewhere else, if I was doing this kind of content creation type stuff. And oddly, Bristol has pretty much a blanket ban on flying drones entirely. You can apply to fly them as part of events, and you can fly them in certain very specific designated areas, tiny proportion of the city. But effectively, it's almost got a pretty much a blanket ban on flying drones as part of bylaws from Bristol City Council, I think. So it really kind of made me step back and think, well, I'm never going to have the opportunity to really use this at all. All those shots I would like to take, well, I just can't do it. So what's the point? But that, again, as I say, that's a personal thing for me. It is an extremely useful addition to the drone, and no question that a lot of you out there will see this as a huge plus and a huge benefit. On the flip side of that, I do want to also say that if it was me physically flying the drone and I was filming someone else, I'd just want to do that by hand anyway. I probably wouldn't want to use active track at all. I would film that and fly the drone by hand, in which case it wouldn't be needed. Am I managing to convince you here yet? Probably not. But point number 7 is the remote. Now, the remote that comes with the Mini 2 is, of course, the version that you need to attach a phone to. It's clumsy, it's a bit awkward, and it's by far the most annoying part of setting up and getting ready to fly. The fact that you've got to kind of like jam your phone in and put the cable in the side and all that. And I thought, well, I would definitely want a controller with a built-in screen. And then I kind of thought, well, is it really that much bother to want to just firstly justify the expense, and secondly to actually put a phone in and just have it kind of like sat there at the top of the screen? Is it? And I thought, well, not really, because firstly, it's worked far more reliably than I ever thought it would. I thought maybe the DJI Fly app might be a bit unreliable, or not particular, just suddenly cause problems with my phone, or it just wouldn't. But it's worked absolutely flawlessly, and I've been really impressed with how well it's worked together with my iPhone 13 Pro. And also, of course, any pictures you take are shoved straight into your camera roll. I'm not sure if that happens if it's connected wirelessly in some way to your phone, and that same sort of thing can happen, but I don't think so. And I like that. I like the fact that you have the media there just in JPEG format, just to sort of sample and just take a quick look at straight after you've sort of flown. And you wouldn't get that with a dedicated remote controller. So that's kind of how I justified it to myself, and just kind of thought, you know what? The one I've got is okay. It works okay for what I need it to. And the final one, just a very minor point, is that the Mini 3 Pro is quieter. It is quieter to fly, and being inconspicuous, I think, is a good thing when you're flying drones. But the reality is that it's not silent, and if you're flying it versus the Mini 2, someone's still going to hear it. If they want to hear it and they want to complain about it, they're still going to hear it. It's not like it's going to fly silently above somebody's head versus the Mini 2, which would sound like a Apache helicopter or something like that flying over somebody's head. It's not the case at all. It's just a little bit quieter, and that is a good thing, but it's not an essential thing. So there we go. My however many reasons, 8 reasons I think there. They were kind of originally reasons I was looking to upgrade, and I've flipped them on their back and just kind of said, you know what? It's just not necessary. The tech is still decent. It is not suddenly redundant because of the fact that a new model has come out. It's nice to have the latest and greatest, but it's just not always necessary.